Welcome back. In this video, we are going to talk about import tariffs and quotas. And this is the last video on market intervention, and this is also the last video for week 6. So before we proceed further, let us understand what import is. In import, a country buys goods and services from other country and bring it for consumption in the domestic market. That's what import is. So of course, when we are talking considering import, then of course we will have only domestic consumers, but we will have foreign supplier as well as domestic supplier. So it is very much possible that we do not care about how much of surplus this foreign supplier is generating. What we are interested in, surplus that goes to our domestic consumer and surplus that our domestic supplier is accruing, or may also be that how much of tax that's coming to government, because in such market government is also playing active role. So now we can define total domestic surplus. It has, earlier we were talking about only total surplus, now we have an additional term domestic. What it means is total domestic surplus. We can say consumer surplus for domestic consumer and producer surplus for domestic supplier, and as well as government revenue. So we are excluding foreign supplier, and that's what total domestic surplus is. We need to understand that we care about our domestic consumer and domestic producer. We do not care about how much of benefit is accruing to foreign supplier, and that is the reason we are defining a new term called total domestic surplus. Now we are going to talk about two different intervention by government. One first is called tariff. Tariff is nothing but a tax imposed on foreign goods and services. And we will also assume that the open world market is very large and it has capability of supply any number of item at fixed price. Items at, we can say, at world market price. So if we want to figure out how does it look like in our demand and supply framework, we are going to draw our demand curve, which is going to be a downward sloping curve. This is our demand curve PQ, and this is our domestic supply. We can call it S dome to indicate it is domestic supply, and we have already assumed that world market can supply any number of item at world market price. Let us say this is the P world market price, and so we can say this would be the supply, and so overall supply will be this. How would it look like overall supply? In the beginning, when prices are very low, only domestic market will supply, because world market is operating at PW, so they would not like to supply any item at price below PW. And if market is open, your domestic market is open, then the supplier from outside your country, our country, they will supply any number of item at PW. So the supply curve will look like as this black curve. So we can see here this quantity, we can say Q domestic. This is the quantity supplied by our domestic supplier, and this is the quantity, we can say total quantity supplied, Q star. And out of Q star, if we take out that Q domestic, this is what the outside supplier are supplying. Now let us say that government imposes a tax of T on foreign supplier. So now, because now they can't supply at PW, they will supply at PW at T, because PW they would be getting and T will be going to government. So the new supply curve would be like this for outside supplier after introduction of, let us say, tariff. And how would it look like? The supply curve is going to look like now. This is going to be the supply curve. New supply curve is going to look like this. And what will happen here? That now after introduction of tax, Q DOM, we can say here T after taxation of tariff, QT DOM is clearly greater than Q DOM, and DOM is an indicator for domestic. So now our internal supplier can supply more. But we can see the total consumption after introduction of tax is now less. Q star T is less than Q star. That is the implication. So once we understand the how does it work, we can get into welfare implication. This is what we have been doing. So we can say here in this graph that I have taken from the previous slide, I have redrawn it. And so we can say that this area is, let us say, A, the whole triangle including this one and this area. Okay, that is A. Let us call it B, let us call it C, let us call it D, let us call it E, and let us call it F, and that will help us understand. So let us look at domestic consumer surplus for domestic. How much is the consumer surplus? Without tariff, we can say CS, and we are paying attention only to the domestic side. The CS is going to be in the first case because this is how much is getting bought and sold. So the consumer will get A, which is this whole triangle, then also B, because you know this is the price the domestic consumer is paying, PW. So A plus B, then also C, then D, and then also E. How much is going to be domestic producer surplus? How much producer would be getting? Only this F, and that is F. How much there is no tax without tariff? How much is government revenue? 0. How much is deadweight loss? We can say there is no deadweight loss, it's operating efficiently. Now we can look at what happens with tariff. With tariff, now the market is operating here at PW plus T, comma Q star T. So with tariff, consumer surplus is going to be just A. This is what consumers will be getting. This is what A. How about producer surplus? Now domestic consumer were earlier supplying in without tariff, they were supplying Q domestic. Now they are supplying QT domestic. Because of this imposition of tariff, some market share will be captured by these domestic producer. So they are operating now at till this much QT DOM they are producing. So their surplus is going to be B plus F. That's what they are producing. And because at this point QT DOM they are producing, how much is coming from the world market or foreign market? Q star T minus QT DOM, and this, so this D is the tax collection. Let me say it. This is the tax collection. So tax collection is given by D. So how much is the deadweight loss? The deadweight loss is this is not getting captured and C is not getting captured. So C plus E would be our deadweight loss. So let us understand why do we have C and plus E. One is, let me use a different setting. this is C, this is C, and this is E. Why are we getting these two different places deadweight loss? So E is very simple to understand. Earlier, Q star amount of items were bought and sold in the market. Now it has decreased to Q star T, and therefore some transactions are not taking place, and that is causing the deadweight loss. Now, how about this was C? You remember this was C. Why do we have C as the deadweight loss? Remember, remember the world market was able to supply goods at PW. Okay, so PW, now after imposition of tax, goods here are being supplied at PW plus T. So it is inefficient allocation to the domestic market, and therefore we are getting, see, remember, notice these items were bought at PW, now these items are being bought at PW plus T, and because of that inefficiency, this deadweight loss of C is coming. So this we should understand. Of course, government does it to give benefit to domestic producer. Their surplus is going from F to B plus F. And so we also see that the world market supplies Q star T minus QT DOM. Let us say what happens if government keeps a quota for foreign supplier which is equivalent to this number, so that we can compare it with tariff scenario. So what happens there? We have a market. This is the domestic supply, S DOM, and this is demand. Now what's happening? The government says that foreign companies can supply Q star T minus QT DOM, let me say, and that is equivalent to, let's say that this is equivalent to A. Only A amount the foreign companies can supply, and of course we are ignoring the cost of import and other things. So if world market, we are getting imported things from world market is supplying items at PW, as we had discussed earlier, PW. So of course, as in the earlier case, this part will be supplied by domestic supplier. Now we have a quota equivalent to A. So the A amount at this price will be supplied at PW price by foreign companies, and then again domestic companies will take over. Why we cannot go in this direction? Because government is limiting the amount of import to A. So how much is this shift? This shift is equivalent to A, and this is of course PW, and because we are taking the equivalent amount, this is going to be PW plus T. So there, if you, I'm not going to get into the details of it, I leave it to you to figure out all the things. I would say that same as tariff condition, there won't be any change in consumer surplus. So consumer surplus would remain same as a tariff T is imposed. Producer surplus will also remain the same, but here government revenue is going to be equal to 0. In this setting, government will not be able to collect any revenue. Of course, there are different things that government can do also. Government can sell quota at T per unit, and then implications are going to be the same, but the basic idea is that these are the different ways the government can intervene in the market. What we have seen so far, we have seen the intervention using taxes, or we didn't get into the detail of subsidy, but you can get into detail on your own. Even when we discussed taxes, we talked about only a specific tax. We didn't talk about ad valorem tax in any detail, but you can work out the details on your own. What happens in case of ad valorem tax, I already gave you some idea. And then you can also get into subsidy, which is very similar to tax, but it's in the opposite direction. Then we got into policies or interventions that lead to an increase in price. We saw the mechanism and we also understood the welfare implication. Then we also talked about one particular intervention that leads to a decrease in price. And then we talked about import tariff and quotas. So this is it for as of now. Next week we will meet again, and next week I'm going to talk about how to do demand estimation. Of course, I have been told that you have already learned regression analysis. You have some idea about regression analysis through statistics. Uh, so I'm not going to get into the regression analysis, although it plays very important role in demand estimation, but I will talk about another some of the other techniques that is used for demand estimation, and then we will move to different market environments. Great. All the best. See you next week.